Okay, so none of that was recorded. Just to reiterate what we've covered to this point, my understanding of this meeting was that it was to cover the issue of car 28. You're asking to discuss other matters. I don't have my notes from the other matters. You're asking us to nevertheless discuss the issue regarding Officer Campbell. The one point that I can make today regarding Officer Campbell is that he visited regarding a trespass complaint where oral notice was given. We offered some evidence in the form of video frames, though I don't remember what the exact video frames were. We offered name and address information for the party or parties that were involved in the situation. Officer Campbell refused to take the information, if I recall correctly, and then also indicated that he wasn't going to take any action. Jim called him, and what was, I don't remember what the outcome of that was, but I think you said that he had subsequently received a call from one of the parties that was one of the parties to the situation, right? And that based on that he was going to take action. So one issue, but not all of the issues that I have with that situation, was that based on my complaint, no action was being taken. Okay? And the Illinois trespass statute allows for oral notification, which is what we made there. And so there was a violation of the law, and the officer refused to take any action based on that. So that's the general theme, I guess, of that complaint. But I don't have, there was a lot of correspondence on that. There were a lot of conversations, and I don't have any of my notes with me. And when things like this happen, I tend to make create external memories of it. And here's a copy for you, by the way, relating to card 28. And I like to refer back to the notes that I took at the time the event occurred, rather than trying to remember it, because some time has passed since then.
Well, and I guess with the trespass issue, I think with regard to what Officer Campbell and Mr. Tevin talked about, I think there was also a miscommunication in the sense of what I view as a police report, and that was part of the problem. When I think of a person calling an officer, that's a report, him taking information, and Officer Campbell told me that he did say that he wasn't going to make a report, but apparently what I think of a report and what you guys think of a report are different things. I think a report, when I talk to Officer Campbell, a report is something that you give to the state's attorney's office. And I don't know what's come of that, but, and that's just, I think, a misunderstanding between an officer's report and what I consider a report, what Dennis considers a report. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know what's come of it. I don't know if Dennis knows what's come of it, because I don't know if anything's happened since then. But and I can understand where he would be under the impression. I mean, he did give this woman oral notice that she wasn't allowed there. She came back. He made the call. Officer Campbell said that he wasn't going to make a report on it. And talking to Officer Campbell, he said that he didn't really have proof that there was notice. And I agree with Dennis in this. If he's willing, just like today when we're talking about car 28, he's willing to give sworn testimony that he did give the notice. It may be a he said, she said situation, but that happens all the time in making a charge that is, or giving the state's attorney the information to make a charge against someone for the criminal trespass statute.
Okay.
So,
Greg, you want to?
Yeah, if I could. I did bring my report. I don't know if this has been given to you. I don't have a problem. I'll reference it just for my sake of memory as well. I did come there. You did tell me you had a person that had been banned from there.
Right, yeah, I'd rather not discuss this matter without my notes here.
Well, no,
Can we just...
Can I just give an overview of what I remember?
Okay, but one thing here is I've got one 40-minute tape with me.
I'll be
Jim.
extremely short. I'm
Okay.
not going to go through this whole thing word for word. I did arrive there. He explained that this female had been banned. He had banned her. She came back on the property. He had a ban notice that he had signed and had her name on it. And said he had sent an email, and it hadn't been returned, so he assumed that she had gotten an email saying that she was banned and everything. to help with future business, because he was upset over people keep coming on his property. To help with that, I did make some suggestions about in the future a certified to make sure she got it, because emails, you can't be guaranteed that she got that.
But there was the oral notification.
Or I know, and granted, I'm not saying about that. I said in future it'd be better, or if an officer could come down and verify it and witness it. I brought up these types of suggestions. There may have been some misunderstanding. I thought that he was going, my thought was that he was going to send this certified letter to her, and I put that in my report, and then if she came back after that point, that we would take enforcement action. That's what I left with my understanding of the situation. I may have been mistaken. If so, it was a mistake in communication. The person that was notified that had come in that day was not the person he thought it was, and he kept calling her a different name. And so I'm not sure that that person knew that she in fact was banned, because he was calling her by another female's name, which he later said, yes, I had the wrong female's name. He kept saying, Jocelyn, you're banned, you know you're banned. She says, that's not my name. Or
No,
Dolores.
that's actually not right.
Dolores, you're banned.
Right.
And that wasn't her name.
Hold on.
This is my understanding. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay, the thing is that now I think we're giving you the impression here that we're interacting on this complaint, and I don't want to handle this complaint today.
Fine.
Okay, because I don't have my information here. I don't want to come back and say, okay, we're ready to talk about this complaint, and have you respond, well, we've already dealt with it.
Dennis, why don't we take care of all these at one time,
Well,
instead of tying up his time, my time?
The problem is
attorney's
that we came here to talk about car 28. I've got the notes for car 28.
Well, that was your understanding, apparently. My understanding, we were gonna wrap up any of your complaints that you had.
Well, and I'll say this, it was my understanding that it was only this one as well.
Were
with
you
the
aware that
complaints.
he's tried to file others through the email?
Well,
Tried to file.
Okay. All right. I'm aware that there have been other complaints, yes. Okay. But for me, when I came into today, I know that there was other complaints, but I don't know that we're dealing with them today. I will say that. And apparently that, there's a problem with miscommunication here, because I only have a limited amount of time today too.
Exactly.
Because I do have to get to court in a little bit as well. That's why we set this up. And I don't want to take up your time,
Oh, I
officer. I didn't know you were going to be here today either, because obviously, if that was the case, we would have done this in a time frame when I would have had more time to deal with
Sure.
the several issues.
Okay. Right. And I think that the communication with him, Dennis is saying that he took no action. And he worked on this thing for an entire day, and just because an officer doesn't immediately make an arrest on your say, doesn't mean that there's no action being done.
Right. Well, and what I want to say about that, and I think Officer Campbell and I had an understanding about it when we talked. Like I said, when he says, I'm not filing a police report, because you and I talked about that, what the
Yes, we did.
understanding was, is, to me, a police report is, I'm making a report to the Champaign Police Department or whatever police department, and something's being done. For you guys, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I think I got the sense a police report is, you turn it into the state's attorney, they make a decision to charge, correct? Right. And so, when you said, and this is my understanding, when you said you weren't making a police report, it was a situation where you felt you needed to investigate it more, as opposed to you weren't going to do anything, but it left an impression, and it would have left the same impression on me if I would have heard that. But as Dennis said, I don't know what's come of it, and apparently there is a report now that you
I
have
think
in
the
your hand.
sensible thing to do would be for us to get a copy of that report and
And-
look at it and see if we continue to have an issue. I
Because
see you
it
have
could
a
be
I see
resolved.
you have a folder there with Reynolds' name written on it. You say I
Are you gonna deal with
attempted
that
to.
too?
Okay, well I don't know. I mean I have gotten no acknowledgement from that. I don't have my notes on it. Okay, I don't even know that there is a complaint because Finney refused the mail that I sent him. I sent him a certified letter with that complaint in it, I believe, and he refused the certified letter. So as far as I know, you haven't even received the complaint, but you have received the complaint. So my understanding is complaint is tendered, acknowledgement is sent. I don't have an acknowledgement of it. I assume that, you have not done anything with it, yet you're here today wanting to discuss it. What I suggest that we do is rather than talk about all the things that we can't do and all the things we'd like to do but we're not going to do, is to do the thing that we can do, which is 28, which is a very simple issue and all the information is right here. And
Well,
We can do that.
the thing that we can do and what we've been trying to tell you, and you've got the letter from the city attorney, I think, there is a process that we go through. One of those is getting the intake form signed to initiate the complaint.
Okay, now,
So we can do that if you would like.
in the letter here, I see no mention of a form. It says, complaint will be received, blah, 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 should review their information, blah, 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 interview the complainant, blah, blah, blah. Citizens who allege excessive use of force shall be asked to sign a written authorization for release of medical information, blah, blah, blah. I don't see anything here saying that for all complaints that an intake form needs to be signed.
Okay.
I mean, is this a
Did you
new
get
procedure?
the letter from the city attorney?
I did.
Did you see it?
Yeah, I got it. I couldn't really make sense of it.
Well,
It didn't seem to be addressing anything specific.
I can tell you that this form is being, in the process of being changed, and that will include that. This law is fairly recent, as 2 years ago, I believe,
Mhm.
in which complainant is required to sign an affidavit. Okay, so that's why we're.
Okay, well, let's
requesting
go
that.
ahead and do that with the car 28 issue.
Well, right, and I guess with the city attorney letter, my understanding is that it dealt with this issue because it was a situation where Dennis was told he had to sign an affidavit, and that was between him and Chief Finney, and yeah, where that's why we set up this meeting. Basically, is my understanding is that because initially we would have done this a while ago, but for the flu. So, and like I said, I don't want to take up your time, officer, because I don't think we'll probably be able to get to it today anyway. So if we can deal with car 28, and then I guess we could probably set up a time where we can deal with anything else that's pending, but apparently with the complaint process, I guess, you'll let me know today what we're going to talk about next time, if that's okay.
I'm trying to be as cooperative as I can in this situation, but I also don't like to feel like I'm being jerked around or played a yo-yo with. Okay, I don't see any reason why if you have issues, we can't just deal with them all today.
Well, I mean, okay, you've got a file here containing information that you're going to refer to, so presumably because you can't remember everything.
Actually, what I'm going to do is create intake forms on any complaints that you have. If you have more than one today, I'll be happy to take it. If you only have the one, I'll take that one. Okay?
Well, okay, so let's deal with car 28.
All right.
Well, then I'll just excuse myself.
All right. Thanks, Greg.
And I don't know, is it okay if we make the copy of the police report so that we can have that for next time? I'll just ask my secretary to do that, or,
Yeah, just bring it next time.
Well, I think
Well,
I'd like to
for-
see it before we meet with you next time.
yeah, that's,
It would have to, I don't know what records does to reports before I release it.
Yeah.
This has not gone
Okay.
through
All
records
right.
yet.
That's
There's
fine.
certain protocols that records does.
Fair
with it
enough.
before they
So
release
how
it.
do we get that then?
I'll talk to Lieutenant Yohnka about
It may
that.
have to be redacted, in other words.
Thank you,
Thanks
John.
for your time, officer.
Yeah, the other thing we would do with that is, did you still want to pursue with that? You need to let us know, and he'll know how to, because when he left, last conversation he had with you was,
Okay,
You want anything else done?
I've got nothing on that.
Well-
I've filed a couple complaints before. I've gotten a letter. The only letter I've gotten relates to car 28. So that's what I assume we're talking about.
okay, let's talk about that. All right. Dennis, what phone do you want me to record here?
217-365-9301.
9301? Date of birth?
7/31/64.
And what address you want me to list?
PO Box 2400. Champaign 61825.
Okay. You remember the incident date and time?
I sent the email on 1/16/06, and the email says that it was that day, half an hour before.
Okay, January 16th. And what time was it?
8:16 p.m.
And the location?
It started at Prospect and Prospect and Bradley, and the first IVC violation that I witnessed was at Prospect and Bradley. The second IVC violation that I witnessed, the first and second violations I witnessed were at Prospect and Bradley, and the third violation that I saw was at Prospect and University.
Okay. And why don't you just tell me, what were the violations at Prospect and Bradley?
Okay, well, I guess I'd just refer you to the email. Would you like me to read the email?
Sure, go ahead.
This evening, I was southbound on Prospect Avenue. As I approached Bradley at about 8:16 p.m., I observed an unmarked Champaign police car make a right turn from eastbound Bradley to southbound Prospect Avenue. I was in a position to see the front of the car prior to the turn and the rear of the car as he completed the turn. At no time was a turn signal visible. Also, the car turned into the far lane instead of the near (curb) lane. The car proceeded south on Prospect Avenue in the left lane. The light at University Avenue was red, and I caught up with the car. The car was labeled 28 in green reflective vinyl lettering. I pulled up alongside the car and observed that the driver was a white male wearing a police uniform. I came to a stop in front of the car, one lane to the right. I was in a position to see the front of the car, both as it was stopped and as it started rolling. While I was watching in my mirror, the car made an unsignaled left turn onto University eastbound. At no time did the driver of car 28 use any lights or sirens to indicate that he was in pursuit.
Okay, so what was that last one? He switched lanes, did you say?
He turned while I,
Left on University
Okay, turn left on the University.
with no signal.
Okay. Was anybody with you?
no.
Where were you positioned when you were in the area of Prospect and Bradley?
I was southbound on Prospect Avenue. As I approached Bradley at about 8:16 p.m., I observed an unmarked Champaign police car.
Okay, so you were southbound approaching Bradley intersection. Okay, and your complaint is the officer violated traffic laws.
3 times. Unsignaled right turn, turn into a far lane, unsignaled left turn. No evidence that he was in pursuit or otherwise lawfully violating traffic laws.
Did you get a look at the driver?
As I mentioned in my email, he was a white male.
Anything else you can remember?
He was wearing a uniform.
All right.
I assume that you know who's driving a car at any particular time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we do.
Is there some question as to whether or not
Yeah.
that person was the person that you know to be driving that car was actually driving the car?
Nope.
Okay.
No question in my mind. I have a question for Mr. Long. Did you work last Thursday?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. And do you live a long distance from your office?
I live in Monmouth.
Okay. When you drove home Thursday, did you signal every turn that you made or every lane that you changed?
Generally I do, but I guess I
How does that,
how does that relate why you're asking me these questions?
The reason I'm asking you that is that's the same questions that we ask the officer, and that's the same response. Generally, I try to do so, but to say that I did it on every incident, can any of us say that?
Okay, I
See what
can.
I'm saying?
I always signal my turns. I always signal my lane changes, and I take the traffic laws seriously. And I think that somebody that's in the position of enforcing traffic laws should be able to answer the question with much higher degree of certainty than somebody that's not in the position of enforcing the traffic laws.
I can just tell you that, common
Furthermore,
response is,
okay, well, furthermore, I did witness this, and I recorded it half an hour after it happened. This is not a fabricated situation, and whether the officer can recall whether he signals all of his turns or not does not impact this situation, because in this particular situation, he did not. If this officer had witnessed me engaging in the same behavior, I would hope that he would give me a ticket. And I think that it's
may
appropriate
or may
that.
not,
Mm-hmm.
may or may not.
Okay, well, the
You know
issue
they
here
don't
is,
have to issue tickets.
okay, that's fine. The issue here is that he violated the law, and the complaint is that the officer violated the law.
Okay. And I can tell you from talking to him, that was his response, same as, Mr. Long's here. Can I say that I did or didn't? Because it's, not one of those things that's gonna sit and memorize, hey, every time I move my vehicle, I've signaled.
Right. Well, I'm not moved by that statement, because the fact of the matter is that I witnessed it, I recorded it shortly after it happened, and I'm
Fine.
certain that it happened.
That's fine. We'll take your complaint, we'll issue it, a discipline situation, we'll look at that. If you're looking for some sort of ticket or something to be issued to this officer, I've spoken to Assistant State's Attorney. They say if you want to pursue that matter and be a complainant and a criminal allegation against them, then you can file a complaint with our office. They'll review it and decide what they want to do with it as far as the citation. We will deal with it only through discipline.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay? And that's your ramification. So I don't want you to get the misunderstanding that we're going to go write this officer a citation for not signaling. Okay? Because that's not what we're going to do. Okay? So, all right, I have that complaint. Need you to sign and date it here, please.
Prospect Bradley.
These are just notes for myself. I'll type it up on this.
Okay, and what do you intend to do with the email? Because I
I'll
noticed
take it
that.
at this point, and we'll put it in the file.
Okay.
I guess probably just reflecting your report for Dennis is that he feels that that's a more accurate representation of a more detailed and accurate representation of what happened, since he did it almost contemporaneously with the incident. But
Okay. You understand why we're having you do this, and this is what we're going to be doing for any complainants in the future. I mean, it's just the way it is.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, just understand that that's going to be our expectations. So
Okay, well, I just had no reason to expect that, because you sent me this letter and it makes no reference to that.
well,
That's,
it will. We're updating that letter at this point to reflect this law. Okay. In fact, we've made quite a few changes. We're going through committee right now and looking at our internal investigation procedure and the whole works. So a lot of that stuff's in the works, but we just wanted to make sure you were aware of that.
and I don't want you to feel like you're getting jerked around here. Honestly, I only thought we were talking about this. Obviously you do have some other things, so.
Well, he's notified us. It's not that we ignore what you sent us. There's just a process that we would like you to cooperate with, and that's
Right.
all we're asking.
well,
Right.
but if I send a complaint and I get an email back saying, this is the process, follow the process, and then I get no letter acknowledging the complaint, I think it's reasonable for me to assume that the complaint has not been accepted, looked at, or is being acted on.
It will not be entered as a formal complaint until the process is done. Doesn't mean we won't look at it as an inquiry and try to figure out what's going on with it. No, we won't ignore it.
Mhm.
What we're just trying to tell you is, just work with us a little bit here,
Sure.
okay?
Right, and we certainly want to do that. And so, like you said, you want to talk about some other things, at least with Officer Campbell. Is there anything else so we can avoid, is
Yeah,
there a future meeting?
I don't know that, like I said, I think once you and Officer Campbell hash out what he's actually done with that case, I think you're probably gonna realize he's done everything he can possibly do with it. Other than when he left you, the last conversation he had with you, you said,
Well, that may
That's
be
it.
the case, but there have been a number of incidents where I have summoned an officer to deal with a trespassing customer. The customer has received oral notification, and the officer has refused to do anything. Now, the reason that I decided to complain about Officer Campbell's behavior is because he is the most recent person to do this, and it seems to me that the complaint, that nothing was going to be done with the complaint. It seems to me that the complaint only moved along after one of the subjects of the complaint made contact with him and alleged that she was somehow mistreated. And so I don't understand why the initial complaint would be ignored, and why the police department's interest in it would suddenly change when the direction of the complaint is reversed. Okay, to me it seems like it seems like looking for an opportunity for retribution and following up on it. Furthermore, I got an email from Finney that basically, when I indicated that I might be willing to drop my complaint against Campbell, Finney's response was basically, "Oh yeah, well we're gonna investigate this other matter, you know, the reverse complaint." Okay, so the impression that that gives me is that the Champaign Police Department serves its ego needs before the needs of the citizens that are paying the expenses and the payroll. So that's Officer Campbell's actions are sort of a proxy for other things that have happened in the past where complaints have been ignored. And when the statute says that oral notification is sufficient, I don't understand why an officer would not pursue a violation of the law.
Okay.
You know.
I appreciate your opinion. However, just like some of the complaints you've made about officers doing nothing with your complaints on trespass, your idea of doing nothing is different than our idea. Okay, you, just because they don't do what you want them to do, like make an immediate arrest, doesn't mean they're not doing anything.
I'm not sure I've ever really wanted an immediate arrest. I don't really think that that's what I may have, but my recollection is that my goal is for something to happen as opposed to nothing. And when an officer comes and refuses to take the evidence that I have available to me, video frames, names, addresses, and whatever, I think it's reasonable for me to assume that nothing's being done, that nothing's going to be done. And that's my perspective.
All right. Well, like I said, I think you probably need to sit down and talk to him and figure out exactly what's been done in that situation and where you go from here. I mean, whether you want to pursue something. I do know that there was some misunderstanding about, you know, who you thought you were talking to, and it got very confusing. So whether you actually gave verbal notification to the right person or not,
there's no doubt that I gave verbal notification to the person who was standing in front of me, regardless of what her name was. Okay. I didn't need to address the person, Jocelyn or Dolores, you are not permitted to enter here again. The notification was given to the person that was standing in front of me.
But you can understand the confusion if you're calling somebody by a different name and you're saying this is this person. I mean, somebody's not going to slap somebody in handcuffs immediately and take them away when there's some confusion.
I don't think I was looking for that.
Okay. All right. Well, that we can hash out later. At this point, I'm taking this complaint. If you want to contact me in the future about any additional complaints, feel free to do that. We can go that route.
Well, I mean, right now you've received as of today, you will have received by postal mail at least one additional complaint. Now,
which one is that?
I can't recall. I can't recall what was in the envelope to Finney. If I was at my office, I could tell you, but I can't. And so, is it your intent to follow the procedure and send me the letter and the intake form on these other complaints, or would you rather do it some other way?
If we get something that indicates you want to file another complaint, like I said, you can call my office, say, okay, I'm ready to come in, and we'll do the intake form. I can do it now. However you want to do it, that's fine, but, you know, we're going to go through the process. In the future, if you send us things by email or by mail, and you don't want to come in and do the form, we're not going to file a formal complaint on it. Doesn't mean we won't look into it, but you will lose a lot of the privileges of a complainant, i.e. being notified, you know, what's happened and that sort of thing. Just so that we're on the same page here.
What's the motivation for so basically you're saying that complaints received by mail will not receive a response?
No,
I mean,
is that
tell me if I'm wrong, Officer Lieutenant, is you won't have, I guess, my understanding from what you just said is that with this formal complaint, Dennis will know what action is taken or not taken with regard to that complaint. And if anything he sends in the mail without filling out a form, he won't know what action is or isn't taken. You're not saying that it's necessarily not going to be investigated,
Right.
but he won't be
Well,
notified of the result.
The reason, what's confusing me is the process seems to be that a complaint is tendered one way or another, and this fact sheet is sent out and a letter is sent out, and then the process proceeds from there. Okay, the process that would include completion of this form, yada yada yada. So you're saying if I send you a letter of complaint, you will or will not then respond with the fact sheet and the acknowledgement.
Hopefully you will leave us some means of communicating with you,
Mm-hmm.
like a phone number or something, so I can call you and say, okay, Dennis, you want to come in? Let's get the intake form so I can ask you a couple follow-up questions here if I have some, and then the process formally will get going. Is that fair enough?
Okay, sure.
Okay, because you got to understand that emails back and forth are fine, but they're time consuming. They don't get questions answered the way they need to get answered. If we got particular things that we'd like to ask you, feedback back and forth is very helpful for us, okay? And that's all we're asking. Let us call you on the phone if nothing else and say, okay, Dennis, I got your email, but I'm a little unclear on this issue here. Just give me the common courtesy to talk to you. That's all I'm asking, okay? And then I'll make arrangements if I have to. If you want me to, I'll drive this thing over to your office and we can have it signed there. I don't care. I'll cooperate any way that you want me to do that. I just want the common courtesy to be able to talk to you in person. So that if I got some questions, clarifications, we can do that.
Okay, the reason I'm apprehensive to engage in too much verbal communication in these matters is my experience with Holly Nearing interviewing Dean Collins in the matter of the trespass issue on February 10th of last year. We had a customer in the office who was asked to leave. The officers, based on prior experience with officers failing to accurately memorialize conversations that we had, I, after calling the police, went to my computer and began to generate a written account of what had happened. When the officers arrived, I was nearly complete with it, and Dean Collins, my employee at the counter, told the officers that I would be right with them. And instead of waiting patiently, they came into a non-public area of the office. They came behind the counter and stood over me at my desk, demanding that I speak to them rather than provide them with a written account. I explained to them politely that I wished to provide a written account so there was no possibility of understandings. They got increasingly impatient. They got rather pushy and rude, and then they ultimately decided not to do anything. And so Holly Nearing interviewed Dean Collins regarding that situation, and I also provided video evidence of the actions of the officers in the office. And after interviewing Dean Collins, wherein Dean said that the officers were rude and pushy and came behind the counter with the invitation, blah, 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 in spite of that interview, Holly Nearing concluded that the officers had been something along the lines of polite and patient and friendly and everything that was the opposite of what Dean Collins had told them. But I guess the reason for that was that in the letter that Finney sent, he cited Dean's inability to provide exact quotes as the reason that Dean Collins' testimony was ignored. And frankly, that's absurd. That's like saying a robbery didn't occur because the victim can't remember whether the robber was wearing purple or puce, right? I think you can paint in broad strokes and be sufficiently accurate to get the message across. But for some reason, Nearing decided to discredit his testimony on the basis that he couldn't remember some of the details. So if I seem a little edgy about oral communications, that's the reason.
Okay, and you can understand that we're a little edgy about email communications because they can end up anywhere, and they can be manipulated, and they can be, put on the internet, they can be fudged around, all kinds of things are done. And we need the interaction. We need to be able to ask questions back and forth. I understand if you want to write a written statement, that's fine, absolutely, but you're still going to have the expectation to have some communication with the investigating officer, okay? They need to be able to ask you some specific questions. In that particular case, it wasn't that they didn't do anything, They removed the individual, sent them on their way, they documented who they were. So it wasn't that they didn't do anything. They did do something, they didn't do exactly what you wanted.
Well, again, my issue there was not that they didn't handcuff and beat the guy. Okay, my issue there was that I think it's reasonable for a citizen to expect that when police arrive, that they won't enter a non-public area of somebody's business or enter their house without invitation. I mean, that's one issue, and I think the other issue is that, whether they have bad feelings about me or not ahead of time, I think they have some kind of duty of care to interact in a polite manner. And you may think from talking to them that somehow I wasn't polite, but actually I went to great pains to be polite with them and actually minimize my verbal contact with them so that they could, so they wouldn't feel threatened, so they wouldn't have a motivation to be unpleasant. Yet they were impatient, they were pushy, they were unpleasant, and they came into the non-public area of the office. And so I'm really skeptical of the process, frankly.
Well, that was last year, this is this year. All I'm telling you is I'm gonna, have the expectation that you will communicate with me or whoever's assigned to do the investigation, so there can be some interaction. Okay, I understand you're apprehensive about, what's being recorded or what's not being recorded. And that happens. There is some miscommunication, but we are gonna have the expectation that you'll at least cooperate with the investigation.
Mm-hmm. I have a question for you. So I provided you with an email that was, I memorialized this event in writing half an hour after it happened, and I've given this to you, yet you've written a kind of a distilled account of this on this form. Now, is it your intention to set this aside and use this information for your investigation, and if so, why? Because this is at a much greater, higher level of detail.
Okay. Did this tell me if you had any witnesses in the car?
Well, no, it doesn't.
Okay. Well,
Okay,
that
but
was
I
one
mean,
little fact that I got today that I didn't have before.
Okay, what you didn't write down had no witnesses on the back. You wrote down a rather kind of an abbreviated distillation of this account. So what I'm wondering is why, if all you wanted to know is if there's witnesses or not, you didn't just ask if there's witnesses.
Because you wouldn't communicate with me.
Well, I mean, right now I'm communicating with you, but you asked me to.
Okay. And
Well,
yes, I think you enjoy this verbal sparring.
Not
I
really.
only had the time, and the way you related last year's incident in such great detail tells me you could have related these other incidents in great detail today too, whether you think you're prepared or not. But anyway, we've got this complaint. In the future, if you want to make additional complaints, contact my office. We'll make arrangements for you to come in, or I'll come to you, have the form signed. If I have some follow-up questions, I'll ask you the follow-up questions, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so I'm not sure I've really got an answer to that question. Are you going to use this, or are you going to use the back of that?
Both.
Okay, good.
This will be attached.
All right.
It'll speak for itself.
I think we ran out of tape there somewhere. Yep.
Okay.
Okay?
And I just want to be clear. So at this point, right now, the only other thing that you have is the issue or non-issue. However, we get the resolution on it is with Officer Campbell, correct? You don't have anything else as far as a pending complaint that we need to set up a meeting for.
If he wants to make a
Well,
complaint
no,
against Officer Reynolds or
Right,
anybody
no,
else.
I understand that, but I'm saying, because, you came today wanting to talk about the...
Whatever he has.
Right, okay. I'm just trying to get a clear picture for me. So, but what you have now, and it's like Dennis said, it may not be an issue with Officer Campbell. It was just car 28 and Officer Campbell, correct? There's nothing else as far as filling out the form, correct?
I'm doing nothing else other than car 28 at this
Right,
point.
but I mean,
And if he
What
wants
I'm-
to initiate something else, he can contact
right, but you don't have anything pending before you other than car 28 and maybe the issue with Officer Campbell, is what I'm asking you.
And he has sent us notification of
Right.
requesting something on Reynolds.
Right.
Okay.
But you don't have anything else today in front of you in your materials that like I said, we would need to set up an appointment to do this kind of thing again. Right now, as we sit here today, regardless of what Dennis may have sent recently.
It's up to him. I mean, if he wants to follow through with the Officer Campbell or the Reynolds complaints, then yes, then we will. meet the
Right,
service.
no,
Well, I mean, we could do Reynolds and
Well,
Campbell at
well-
the same time. That's fine.
I'm probably making this more complicated with my
Yeah, I think
question
so.
than today, basically, it's the only complaint that you have where you would need to have Dennis fill out a form and swear to his information would be car 28.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which we just did.
Right, okay, so there's nothing else right now that you know as a pending complaint that we need to go through the process again?
Right.
Okay,
Okay. Dennis, let me give you a little information too, something. Apparently you'd send something, registered restricted delivery.
I sent
Did she
something
finish?
certified mail to Finney, yes.
Okay, according to the postal person, it was registered restricted delivery, could only be signed for by Chief Finney. When it was attempted to be delivered at the police station, he was out of town.
On 3 occasions, there were 3 delivery attempts. They were about a week apart.
They may have been, but if he was the only one that could sign for it, so in the future, what I would recommend, just let anybody at the police department sign for it, it'll get to him.
Okay.
You know, just send it, you know,
I can
not
do
just
that.
just his name,